The biggest thing to remember about online dating that people don't really recognize is that it really, in the end goal, is to meet somebody. So it has the same purpose as regular dating. It is just a way to kind of start off dating without having the awkwardness of the first date. So, online dating is a $4 billion industry. So it is very big and it increases every year. I have no idea what that number is going to be with the pandemic, but I guarantee it's going to be much higher because people aren't going out and meeting. About 20% of brides report meeting their grooms online. They think that
Wow.
that number is actually closer to 30 to 35 because there still is some hesitancy with people to say that they met someone online. I actually have a friend who met her husband online, and they often tell their grandparents that they met at church, which is not the case. So there is a little bit of fibbing about this. And then if you kind of look down through this, about 17% of brides met through friends, 15% during college, about 12% at work. So think Jim and Pam from The Office. So you can see that online dating is um, this big trend. So what is different about online dating, or why is it so useful? It's more effective in some ways. It allows you to be more selective before your interaction. So if you think about it, you are going to go on a date with somebody. What would you do on a first date if you've never met them? Yell it out. Jenny. Yes, Jenny. Jenni. What would you do on a first date? You can unmute yourself. Peyton. First date. What are the things you do on the first date?
I asked them to play 20 questions so I can get to know them better.
Ooh, a person after some of my friends' own heart. 20 questions so you can know them better. What else? Maddie Rowe.
I would say just to like get to know them, like the same, like ask questions, like learn about their interests. Do we have something in common? What are their goals?
Perfect. Yeah, so you're finding those mutual interests. So one of the nice things about online dating is it allows for more selectivity before interactions. So potentially you're going to know, one, if you find them attractive, right? So if it's not a blind date, you can see if you like them or not. You're going to be able to, depending on which dating app you use, you're going to be able to see what their interests are. It also allows for a soft intro, so you can chat back and forth. A lot of times there's going to be a messaging ability. And then it's easier to create false personas leading to the face to face date. Now, I'm not advocating that people create false personas, but you can make yourself seem a little more interesting and a little more attractive that way. So, those are some of the good and the bad things. With that being said, online dating is a broad term. So about 15 years ago, online dating, there was like one or two apps out there and they were all the same. In the last 10 years, they've really exploded, and there's two kind of separate areas of online dating. I promise you, we're going to get to talking about older adults and online dating, but I'm setting it all up. This is like a really good joke, and I'm setting it up, maybe. Um, Two different types. You got location based. So location based is where you put down your location and then you put a circle of how far you're willing to go out to meet somebody, and then it matches you with potential people. And then you swipe left or you swipe right if you find them attractive. So think of Tinder, Grinder, Bumble. There's other ones on there. I don't even know if they're still around because they pop up and they go away pretty quick. There's interest based. So interest based is more the idea you still set a parameter, but you are matched up based on questionnaires or interests. So it might be a psychology test, it might be an interest test. So going back to what Maddie and Peyton said, I'm going to kind of take away that initial, what do you like? What do I like? What are the things that we, have in common? It's going to help you with that. So those are your kind of two ones. You got your interest based, your location based. There's some newer apps out there. There is one that is talking about using DNA. So we're going to talk a little bit about generational differences, but it tries to match you based on DNA compatibility. Um, your friend network via Facebook. So there's one called Hinge that tries to look at who your friends are and see if you have mutual friends. And then there are ones that are based on like income, celebrity status, age, things like that. Tinder. So one of the questions I always get about this, going to the title, is isn't Tinder just a hookup app? So it used to be, right? When Tinder first came out, basically everyone was using it to hook up. If you don't know what hookup is, you should go. My mom and my mother-in-law are actually on this. So, Mom, Sue, you can go type in hookup. Don't do it on a work computer. Go ahead, Elaine.
Should they go to Urban Dictionary or no?
Well, yes, Urban Dictionary is actually the only dictionary that I recognize. No other dictionary do I recognize.
I'm scared that you have just sent both of our mothers to Urban Dictionary.
And they're looking down at their phone right now. Oh, man.
We'll debrief later.
Oh, no, Mom. You're going to get an education. It used to be a hookup app. Only about 5% of people in a recent survey said that they want a Tinder hookup. So bend your mind around that, right? Everyone thinks of Tinder as this hookup app, but really only 5% of people really want to have that hookup experience. If you ask people how many people are hooking up, they will estimate above half. So you got this thing where everyone thinks everyone is hooking up, but nobody really wants to do it. Now, what is it really used for? About 77% of people said that they've met someone that they liked. About 37%, and it's going up, the last number I saw was about 40%, report that they've dated someone from Tinder. And so only about 20% of people said that they've actually ended in a hookup. So 5% of people want to hook up, think people over 50% think that people are hooking up, and 20% actually do hook up. So what do you think that says about Tinder? Thoughts on it? If your friend, let me ask a question this way. If your friend was like, Nick Nelson, I need to find the best app to find someone I was going to fall in love with. Should I use Tinder? What would you say? Nick Nelson, your camera's off, but I'm looking directly at you.
Sorry, could you say that one more time?
Yeah, no, that's
pretty bad in here.
Yeah, that's fine, Nick. So your best friend, guy or girl, says, Nick, I want to find the love of my life. I'm thinking of using Tinder. What would you say?
I'd probably say don't, because Tinder is a app that has the reputation of simply being used for hooking up, and I don't really know anybody who has gotten like an actual relationship out of Tinder that lasts more than maybe a week and a half.
Okay, that's fair.
I would say probably not to use Tinder. But
okay, I like the anecdotal evidence. Anyone else want to jump in there? Thanks, Nick. All right, so on to the actual when we're talking about older adults. So what we know is that a Pew study found in 2013, 2015, so these are older numbers, and I assume that they are trending up because what we are finding is that more and more people are using dating apps to meet people. But 2013 to 2015, the number of adults 55 and over doubled from 6 to 12%. That said they had actually used a dating app. What we found is that right around that time, so about 2016, capitalism jumped in and a bunch of apps that were specifically geared towards older adults came on the scene. So we've got Our Time, Stitch, Senior Match, Senior People Meet. They all have lower age limits. So you have to be 50 to 55, somewhere like that. You can't be any younger than that. I went and I looked back, and up until about 2010, I think it was, eHarmony, the highest age you could put, it might have been 2005, was like 45 or 50. So they were just assuming that after the age of 50, no one ever really wanted to go out and find someone on the internet. So you can see that in 15, 20 years, there's been this huge difference. Now, what about Tinder? Of the 6.7 billion paying Tinder subscribers, so 6.7 billion people subscribe to Tinder. That is a lot of people. About 20% are 55 and older. So just to put that in context for you, that is 1.3 billion people on Tinder are 55 or older. Now, you might ask yourself, what about 65 or older? What if we're talking about retirees? About 3% of Tinder users are 65 or above. That's about 201 people. Now, you may be thinking, Bill, I have no idea how many 201 people or 201 million people are. The population of Florida is about 20,000. So we've got about 10 Floridas worth of people 65 and older.
20 million.
20 million. What did I say?
20,000.
Oh, yeah. No, I meant 20 million. Thank you. Glad you're here to correct me, hon.
It's what I do.
It's a good marriage right there. Yep. So Florida has 20 million people in it. You've got about 10 Florida's worth of people on Tinder, which is interesting also because Florida is where people go to retire. So I feel like I really tied that in. So the question, is grandma on Tinder? Yes. If grandpa or grandma are single as a Pringle and they're looking to mingle, they are probably considering using a dating app. And that is going to increase even more. So why has there been this shift? That's one of the things that people want to know. Actually, I'm going to go back. Why do you all think there's been this shift? What are some ideas? Yes. I've heard a rumor before Elaine answers that as a kid, she was the one who answered the questions first in all of the classes. And so I wondered if this would come to a head.
When I was in elementary school, a teacher once pulled me aside and asked if I could raise my hand about half the amount of time I had been raising my hand.
Me too.
Really, Barb?
Yes.
Friends. Oh. So I am going to say that we give older adults a bad rap and we think they can't learn technology, but older adults can and do learn technology when it benefits from them, or it benefits them.
Good. So when there's a motivation factor. Excellent. What else? Sue, you unmuted yourself.
Yeah.
You don't even have to raise your hand. This is Elaine's mom, by the way.
That's why I raised my hand, I guess. I think that they think it's safer. You know, is basically because they get to probably know a little bit about that person before they ever meet them, and they never were able to do that too much before. So, and like Elaine said, everybody's more technology based, so they probably even if they're good at it, they can probably do some snooping and find out other information that's not even about that person. That's not even in the app that they're using.
Very good point. The old internet stock. So it used to be called the Facebook stock, but now we've got so many social media apps that you've got to do like Twitter. You got to jump on TikTok if they have it. It's a lot more work, people. What else? Anyone else? I see Christy reaching forward. Are you going to say, yeah, she wants to? Go, Christy, go.
Well, I just was wondering if maybe at a certain point, if you're single and older, you could feel a little more isolated and there might not be as many opportunities. Like, I don't know, maybe you don't want to go down to Sharky's or to Joker's. Like you're feeling like there's not as many opportunities. So this would be a great opportunity where you could make some connections.
Excellent. That's a very good point. Barb, you look like you were going to say something.
Oh, I was going to say they want to meet people from different parts of the world. And Excellent. It helps them transcend geographic boundaries.
So an interesting kind of sidebar about meeting people across the world. When online dating was first put out there, it was marketed around this idea that your soulmate could be on the other side of the world and you could go and meet them and you could fall in love. And what they quickly found is that no one actually wants to date at a distance. It is okay if it is for a little bit, but people really don't like long distance. However, older adults may have the money, they may have more mobility, so it could be useful for them.
Are you familiar with the show 90 Day Fiance.
Oh, I am very familiar with the show 90 Day Fiance. I could give a lecture solely on that if you'd like me to.
So whether it's real or not, I mean, that is people meeting across cultures at least.
It is,
So,
yeah.
so Bill is somewhat obsessed with 90
Well,
Day Fiance. I don't watch it.
obsessed seems like strong language.
I don't watch it quite as much, but what I do notice that is interesting from that dynamic, Barb, is oftentimes there is a large age difference where one of the partners would fall into maybe the older adult category and the other may not.
Excellent. So, why the shift for older adults? Like Elaine said, older adults are becoming more tech savvy. Obviously, what we are doing is the group that we consider older adults have been around while computers were more prevalent. And so they are becoming more and more skilled. So they are more native to it. Newspapers, I found an article that was talking about how online dating used to happen if you wanted to meet somebody and it wasn't in church with a friend at the gym, you put an ad in a local paper. So you were saying, I'm looking for blah, 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 single white female, single white male. I'm looking for this. Newspapers are going away. And so there's not that vehicle. If you look to my meme on the side, which I probably put more work into the memes than I did into the actual bullet points. If you've ever heard the song, If You Like Pina Coladas by Jimmy Buffett, that is about a person who puts a personal ad in and meets his wife. So go listen to it tonight if you'd like. I saw some furrowed brows. It is Jimmy Buffett, right? No, it's not. Look it up. Use the Google machine. All right. And then the other thing is apps targeted at older adults. So as we found these apps that are coming up and they're saying, hey, we'll limit your lower range, what we're finding is that older adults use them and then they're like, well, this isn't so intimidating. I'm going to jump on eHarmony or I'm going to jump on Tinder. This gives me a bigger pool now. So I can find more people. So the next question, are there still creepers? I see a lot of people nodding their heads. Oh, Elaine has chatted me. It's Rupert Holmes. Thank you. Good job. Are there still creepers? Are there still people who get on there just to try to hook up with people? Yes, actually, similar amounts of women, over 50 reported receiving a similar amount of unwanted content. So lewd messages, lewd pictures. Sue and Danelle, plug your ears. Those are dick pics, what people send out, they still find those, they still receive those as women in younger age groups. So that does not go away. That was reported in the Journal of Women in Aging. Also, poor grammar and conversational skills are still there. So just because people get older doesn't mean they get much better at their grammar or they're much better at conversing over dinner. And then there is still a considerable amount of ghosting. So where you'll go on 1 or 2 dates with someone and then they just quit contacting you. You can't get a hold of them, even in older adults. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, can I ask has there been a study if older men also like their profile picture to be taken as a selfie in the front seat of their car or a picture of themselves in the mirror without a shirt? Because I found that to be an interesting phenomenon with the 30, 40-year-old men. So I wondered if that also extended beyond that.
Only if they have a barbed wire tattoo around their bicep. You know what? I could not find anything. 2 things I couldn't find that probably need to be researched. The type of pictures people take if they're older adults, if they're similar. And then there is almost no research on same-sex couples and older adults in dating apps. I could not find anything that was definitive. So I probably should have started out by saying most of this research is on heterosexual couples, men looking for women, women looking for men.
So if you are a family service major, and I know my family rel class, many of you are tuning in, and you are looking for an honors thesis or an independent research project, there's a lot of opportunity there.
There are. and I still need to go up for full professor. So I would be happy to work with you and publish something. Shameless self promotion.
I have a question, Bill.
Yeah,
Um,
you can just
is
say the
there
question, Sue. You don't even have to
okay?
start with yeah.
Are there very many statistics about? It seems like it's mostly women who get catfished through these kind of apps and stuff. Because I know somebody personally who this happened to, and she's lost a lot of money. So I'm just curious, what are the statistics for people like that?
Yeah, so you got kind of two different things. Catfishing is when, and I'm sure you know this, catfishing is when basically somebody says they're someone who they're not, and then they won't meet you, and then when you meet them, you realize they're not. Largely, that is reported by women, but they don't. What in the one article I found about it, what they were saying was we just couldn't get men to talk about this. So
Hmm.
potentially, men are also getting catfished. They're just not coming out and saying it, or only women are getting catfished, but we don't really know. That's a really good question. Um,
Well, and I guess maybe my terminology is wrong. You're right about making sure, but I mean like scamming people for money through it.
Scamming, yeah. So there wasn't a ton about that, and especially on those like our time things like that, they try to control pretty heavily for that and verify age. Now, it's probably more likely that someone gets scammed, like they match with somebody on Facebook or they match with somebody on a dating app and then they go off the app and go onto Facebook and then they're no longer in that controlled environment. But generally, it's more women with when they're older adults than men. Is the few things I found about it, but by no means is that definitive. One thing to remember is that women tend to live longer than men, and so they tend to have money, and they have the life insurance policy or whatever, where men tend to have their wife still, and so they are less likely to have that. So there's less of a pool to ask about. Great question. We got one in the chat. Facebook came out with a dating section. If you didn't know that, I did know that, Maddie. A man might not want to admit he's being catfished due to masculinity issues. Yes, very good, Annette. Welcome, Annette. I didn't know you were. I thought you couldn't come, so glad to see you. Man, I lost track of where I was. Oh, the number we talked about a bit about this. The number of eligible bachelors decreases as your cohorts get older. So men get to be more selective, and we find this through all of dating research, right? The fewer amount of people in the pool, they get to call the shots who they want to date. So men kind of end up having a little bit of an upper hand here because they can be more selective because there's fewer of them. You're going to say something, Elaine? Oh. Elaine is a little bit older than me, and I think it was her plan that I would die like right at the same time because she cares so much about me. She couldn't live without. You look like you're okay. So, do different age groups online date for the same reason? So, the question is, are they dating for the same reason? Are there differences? Sort of. And like in most things in social science research, we don't have a great answer. In general, and again, seriously, in general, people, because whenever I say something like this in class, someone's like, well, my uncle's sister's brother, blah, 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 blah. So this is very big generalization. 18 to 22-ish year olds are looking for relationships with less commitment, but they also are looking for companionship. So less commitment, more companionship, physical intimacy is important. 27 to 50-ish people are looking for relationships that center around long-term commitment. So they are thinking about having kids, building a home. Companionship is still very important. You see a bit of a decrease in the need for that physical intimacy, but they're still looking for that companionship type intimacy. And then 55-ish and up are still looking for commitment or compassion and companionship, but they want more commitment than an 18 to 20-year-old, 22-year-old, but generally less than a 27 to 50. So they're kind of the Goldilocks. They're right in the middle there when you get to that age, if you're on a dating app. So,
has there been a study done, Bill, where to see that older men are looking more for somebody, they're looking for marriage because they want someone to take care of them, whereas the older females are looking more just for some companionship, somebody to do something with, and not wanting the marriage and that much commitment.
Well, you set me up very well for my next slide here, Diane. Thank you. So if you go down to that third bullet, why is there this difference in older adults? Women tend to have a minimal desire to take care. So they are less likely to want to take care. And what we find, and I believe Elaine did some research on this when she interviewed older women who had been widowed or who were single. Go ahead.
Older adult women who lived alone.
Okay.
But many of them, the majority were widowed.
Right. And so they had went through taking care of a spouse potentially who had died. And they kind of understood that if I get into another committed relationship, I am going to have to do the caretaking, and it is physically, emotionally, mentally taxing. And so they are less likely to want that commitment because they don't want to have to deal with that. Men, on the other hand, likely if their spouse died, they did have to do that, but family members tend to pitch in more if a man has a wife who is terminally ill than if a wife has a man. So they don't bear the emotional brunt of that as much. So yeah, very good question. So that's one of the reasons for the desire for less commitment. Child rearing is likely over at that age. So people are no longer looking to have somebody to have a child with and raise it all the way from birth. Now you may start taking care of someone's kids. You may have stepkids, you may have grandkids, but that's a different type of a commitment than having kids from birth and then raising them all the way up. So a little bit of a trend towards less commitment there. Generational norms. So one of the reasons why there's probably more of a trend towards that commitment is that as we have progressed in society, there is less of a emphasis on marriage as you look through the generations. And so what you're finding is that probably those 18 to 22-year-olds and some of the younger 20-year-old people are wrestling with that idea of, do I really want to get married? What does it mean? Religiously, do I care about that? Where the older people come from, the older adults come from a tradition where you got married. That was part of the commitment. So, Barb, I see you unmuted.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask a question back to the caretaking.
Yeah.
I know you've emphasized here emotional, but I'm just wondering, I'm thinking too, older women may not want to be defined as the dishwasher, the cook, all the chores that have been traditionally assigned to women. And particularly if we're looking at this age group. So it's not just emotional. I would assume it's also work.
I agree with that. It would have been maybe 2006 or 2007. A student and I did a study of our older adult women who were living alone. Most of them had lost their husband to death. But what was really interesting is previous studies had asked women in this situation questions about how lonely do you feel? They had given them scales of depression. They had talked about like grief, and that's how they assessed these women in terms of collecting data. We did something a little bit different when we went in. We tried to take a more objective approach, and we asked them, what do you like about living alone? What do you not like about living alone? And we found out that, although they missed their husbands and some of them were hesitant to admit it, most of them enjoyed living alone. And they talked about very small things, well, not small things, but being able to control the remote, being able to have cereal for dinner. And they were enjoying these things about life. So I think you're right on about that, Barb.
Yes. I did not find that in the articles that I read, but it stands to reason, right? It is not.
Well, you should listen to your wife.
I will say that Jorge, so Christy and Jorge who are on here, Jorge has told me that when Christy leaves town, he likes to eat all of the things that disgust her. So what all are they, Jorge? It's like anchovies, Vienna sausages. You're muted, Jorge.
Sardines, tuna, all the fish.
All the smelly stuff. that I do not allow to be eaten. So when I die, he can eat that stuff every day.
That's the deal. If you die, that's morbid.
I have a donor that is well into her 80s, and she has made the comment numerous times to me that she does not want to be the nurse or the purse. I think that my mom's in a nursing home now, and she talks with her ladies, and she uses that line a lot with them, and they've all adopted it.
So the other kind of difference is physical intimacy. Like I said, that is something that if you ask anyone who's on a dating site, as far as wanting to have sexual experiences, having somebody that they can be physically intimate with, like 85 to 90% of people say that's a goal of theirs. What we do know from research is that people who have consistent sexual partners report enjoying their sex life better and are at a reduced risk for STIs. So that is potentially one of the reasons why people are going to use online dating as a means to meet somebody and want that commitment. Some older adults, though, may want to have a more adventurous sex life than they had when they were in their first relationships or previous ones. And so there are, a small cadre, or not even a small cadre, a subpopulation of older adults who are out there. And part of the reason why they want this is they want to experience multiple sexual partners. And so it becomes a vehicle for that. Bet you were excited to hear about me talk about that, Mom, huh? So wrapping it up, are the age groups really that different? So on one hand, no. They both want intimacy and companionship with someone who is similar to them. So that is, everyone wants that. When we survey people want someone who they can depend on, they can feel like they have their back, they can tell intimate details with, and then be physically intimate. There is a difference, though, because at different stages in your life, you're looking for different things in a partner. And so people who believe in one monogamous relationship and then you're done, typically what they find is that after their spouse passes away or maybe they get divorced, they may have said, I'm never going to date again. But they find that, yeah, I do want to date again. I want to find somebody else. And going online kind of allows them to do that in a more safe space. So wrapping it up, what if grandma or grandpa wants help on their profile? Because now you are a certified older adult dating expert because you took this. Your certificate will be in the mail from Elaine. First thing, and this is interesting, good pictures. No matter what age you are, the strongest predictor of how many matches you get is how good your pictures are and your level of attractiveness. So I always tell people if they ask me, one of just them, probably stay away from the mirror selfie or the picture in your car for Nick or any other guy that we have on here. That one's not going to get you a lot of play. Christy's shaking her head, so she's backing me up on this. And then several pics of you doing things that you enjoy, right? So your pictures tell a story. Do you like to hike? Picture of you hiking. Do you like to be with your dogs? A picture of them. But not too attractive. So interestingly enough, when we look across the spectrum, if you are a 6, 7, or 8, you tend to get the highest amount of people matching with you, as opposed to if you are a 9 or 10 or a 2 or a 1. So super attractive people actually do not get as many matches as people in the middle. And they think, and they don't have a good theory for this, but they think it's because people are intimidated. Don't worry, no mirror selfies over here. Thanks, Nick. And then talk about interests. So we're building companionship. So you want to talk about, hey, here's what I'm interested in. Again, people do this for the physical intimacy, but really it is to build a connection with someone. And so what I tell my friends, if they ever ask me, what should I put on my dating profile? You should put what you're about, right? Because what we know from research is that you best match with people who are like you. So if grandma's going to go out, if she loves to crochet, she needs to talk about crocheting. If she likes to dirt bike, she needs to talk about dirt biking. Don't hide who you are. And that's what I got. Questions?
I would like to throw out a question specifically to a couple on here that we know did meet online.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, Christy and Jorge, if you could tell us when you were online and you saw the other person's profile in terms of pictures, what made you pursue that?
First, what number would you give them? 1 to 10. I want to see a spousal fight.
Yeah. Well, Jorge was the first one to contact me, so he'll have to answer.
So there were two pictures that took my attention. One of them was Christy next to a beautiful flower, so the whole picture was very nice. The other one was her in Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
So it was about travel, and I like traveling too. So that took my attention also. But they were beautiful pictures.
Christy?
Well, yeah, so everyone knows, my friends Bill and Lane know this story, that I was at first hesitant because several of Jorge's pictures were him running, because he does like Ironman and triathlons. Obviously I don't. So it was a little intimidating. It was that intimidation factor. Like, I didn't know, like, if he was this big, like, running guy, which he kind of is, I just didn't know if we would match. So I took pause to getting to know him, because I just wasn't sure if we were the right match. And obviously we were, despite the fact that we have different interests.
Other questions? Well, guess what? I have more information in case this happened. So now your grandparents or your mom or your dad asked you for dating advice. I have matched with this person. What do I do? Here's what we know from research. You're going to get to know them through messages and emails, but don't prolong it for too long. What we find is that when people message back and forth for months or weeks, they build up this kind of idealized version of the person in their head, and then they can never live up to it. So if you're new to online dating, make sure that you don't prolong that too much, and also don't match with everybody. You can be selective. You're not going to hurt their feelings. Dating one person or saying, I'm going to go on a date with them and then decide if I want to go out with them further is much better than trying to date 5 or 6 people. Generally, that doesn't work. Other stuff to do on the date: smile, be the kind of person you would want to date, ask as many questions as you answer. And what I've heard and what I've seen in research is that people either talk too much or they talk too little. And so a good rule of thumb, if you look out in the research, is if you get asked a question, you should answer it and then ask them a question and go back and forth. What you find is that people kind of get into a rhythm then. Stay off your phone. That's one of the biggest dating, when you look at what people have issues about in dating, it is that the person was on their phone the whole time. And then this is actually advice that Elaine has given several of our friends, and I thought it was one of the most brilliant things she's ever said. You don't have to decide if you want to marry the person, right? You only have to see him if you want to see him one more time. That's all you got to decide. Do I want to go on another date? And then after that date, do you want to go on a date with them again? And then after that, and the next thing you know, you've been on so many dates, you just can't see yourself doing anything but going on dates with them. And that's when you decide maybe you need to make it a more permanent thing. Jake Bates, are you in your garage? You're on mute too.
Yeah, I'm in the garage. I'm cooking.
Oh, cool. What are you cooking?
Well, not anchovies.
Oh, brats. I love a good brat.
Come on over.
Other questions for me?
Bill, I do have a question.
Yeah.
Any research, or have you found that older people, especially ones who maybe are widows or widowers, and have been in a relationship for a long time, but now want to get back on the scene, have they found if they look for a mate like their former mate, or if they then at that point of their life, like totally change it up or figure out they really want something different? Has there been any research on that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, Elaine, you unmuted. Do you want to start?
I can speak to that somewhat. And I don't know about the online dating piece, but what research has shown is that it is very common for with older adult couples. So Harry's wife dies and June's husband dies, and they've known each other for 40 years, and they were in card club together, they went to coffee together, and they tend to pair up, which you might think wouldn't work well because there's a lot of kind of background dynamics, but June knows what Harry's like as a husband, and understands how he treats women or how he treats people, and has been around him and has gotten to see what his role is like as a spouse. So although it seems odd, a lot of those situations are actually really successful.
The other
So
thing,
that means, Christy, let's think about what that means for Bill and me and you and Jorge.
so the other thing is that you tend to be friends with people who you are like. And what we know from research is that people who are similar have successful relationships. And so it stands to reason that your friends would probably make a good partner for you if you weren't with your partner, because you can tolerate them and hang out with them and interact with them. So Jorge and I may get married. Sorry, Elaine. Sorry, Christy.
Well, I was going to bring up Boston marriages. And if your students don't know what Boston marriages are, that's a good internet search to do. So I'm wondering particularly about women who, and maybe they wouldn't go, are there sites for women who want to meet women to be friends, to be companions, and no sex?
I have not heard about that, but
I gotta invent it.
Yes, I have had two other colleagues say that to me, that they wish that there was a site where they could meet people to cohabitate with and just have friends, but it wouldn't be weird. And one of Elaine and I's mutual friends said she had been attempting to find people places and ask them, but then they kind of thought it was a date. And she's like, no, it's totally platonic. I just think you'd be fun to hang out with. Mm-hmm. So no, I have not seen just friends, totally platonic, out of this world platonic. I'm thinking up names for you, Barb. Let's get coffee. It's just coffee.
Platonic platoon.
Oh, there you go.
Is that a site? Wait a minute. Platonic?
No, I'm making it up. That's what
we're giving you names.
Oh, we're getting a name.
Yeah, you're going to invent it, and then you're going to give us 10% because we named it.
Or we're going to do it together.
So, that could be another name, too.
Because, I know there's been research on women who are married to men for much of their life. And then they either, I'm not going to get into labels, but let's just look at the behavior. They then do start dating women once their spouse dies, or they have the platonic relationship, a Boston marriage. And so Boston marriages started way back, in the 1800s, where women who were working in cities would live together to save money and to be safer. So, yeah, it's kind of an interesting.
I feel like we just talked about cohabitating and families and aging. There are cities that help people find others to live with, not romantically, but to save money. Mm-hmm. That's one of the things that there's a decent amount of research about this, that online dating is useful in that it allows people to signal their preferences without having to do it in a place where they could be negatively impacted. So if you go to a bar, you have to play this game. Is that person into me? Is that person into what I'm into? However, if you're on a online dating site, you get to kind of fly your flag and people get to accept you or not. So Silver Nest.
Silver Nest.
Phone sharing. Wow.
Phone sharing.
Maddie says there are friendship apps that you let's see, there are friendship apps where you can meet people based on your interest. Bumble, BFF, Meetup, Nextdoor. Oh.
I was gonna say we use like Nextdoor like for our like communities. So like where I live specifically, they have like a Nextdoor neighborhood thing. So like you can see like who's around you, and they'll be like, "Hey, we're having a barbecue. Come on down." And it's just kind of like a fun way to meet people, or like if they found a lost dog, or you're missing your cat. So
Peyton says Bumble has a friend option. Our Nextdoor in our neighborhood is generally just neighbors complaining about whose dog crapped on the other one's lawn, or whose kid is playing in the street. But that seems like a way better use of that technology. Wow, this has been fun. Anything else?
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I will say, on Sunday night at 7, I will be talking about, I gotta think of my title, COVID, Dementia, and Nursing Homes, Perspectives of a Gerontologist. And I actually decided that perspectives of a gerontologist isn't quite the direction I want to go entirely, because I also want to talk about perspectives from a family member. So if you know Clara Peterson, who is a student at UNI, we were recently both in a news story in Des Moines talking about this, and her grandma has dementia and she was in a nursing home. She is in a nursing home, and Clara went a year without seeing her. So Clara is going to talk about her experiences, and I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of just some of my perspectives and kind of where we go from here. So if you'd like to join Sunday, love to see you. Anything else, friends?
Thanks, everybody. If you have
Thanks
any
so much.
questions and you didn't want to ask them in front of people, feel free to hang around.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Bye.